Welcome everybody. So we're live for today's webinar. We are here with Emanuele Quintarelli, my co-conspirator at Boundaryless, and one of my co-conspirators, I would say, and with Yolanda Martin from Kaluza, our old friend, I must say, and we are here today to talk about. Essentially, what does it take? What does it mean? Essentially, to embrace ecosystems and platforms from the perspective of an organization, and more specifically, what does it mean? From the point of view of how do you adapt not only your business model, but also your organizational structures, your capabilities, your technologies. So. Looking at the platform ecosystem transformation from a holistic perspective, I must say. So, welcome both. Yolanda, do you want to just say a couple of words about you to introduce you to our audience?
Yes, sure. Hi, I'm Yolanda. I've been a platform design director for platforms at the moment. It didn't start like that. I didn't start as a platform design director. I didn't even know what a platform was, a platform design. And it has been an evolution the last 8 years to first discover the practice, then understand the practice and master it, mostly thanks to Simone and the toolkit, and then evolve it and work in a couple of platforms very consciously, doing so as a platform strategist.
Thank you so much. And maybe you didn't even need the introduction because you have been a guest in some of our events. I remember you were at our sense-making session at the Future of Platforms, and some of our friends also met you at some boot camps. So thank you very much again for joining us. And Emanuele, welcome also to you. You are normally the host of these conversations, so maybe you can frame a bit the context of these webinars.
Yeah, it's funny to be on the other side. Happy to be here. We are having these conversations to explore the frontier of organizational design, coming to it from another angle. There is not the organization, but is the market. And we are seeing many large companies exploring this space, trying to make sense of the complexities and the opportunities connecting to being an aggregator, being a platform, in terms of what it entails inside the organization for their own people, for their own relationship, for the resonance with the market. We are doing this with international players. We've been doing this for months. And today we are having a closer discussion, thanks to Yolanda for being here, to maybe raise some key points that incumbents or even startups may focus upon to accelerate their evolution.
Thank you so much. Just a little thing. You have your mic is, I think, scratching a bit on your shirt, so maybe you can check it. Yolanda, sorry for interrupting you.
No, I was actually distracted with something else. Children sending me messages and crazy stuff. So, can you repeat that question again?
I mean, it wasn't the question. It was just I was just introducing Emanuele, but so time to drop the question on the table. So this is the core element that we want to discuss today. We want to really understand, or at least try to exchange with explain to our audience what are the three main pillars, essentially, of embracing ecosystem platform thinking in an organization. And I would say in an organization of any size, but more specifically, organization of a certain size that also leverage on a certain technological capability and have a certain organizational complexity to manage. So imagine that you live in an organization that runs on an infrastructure, some technological capabilities, APIs, whatever, has products, has value propositions on the market, like either simple products or services, but also marketplaces, increasingly platforms, as we know. And the question is, what are the dimensions of the challenge, essentially? This is what we want to discuss today. And my first question for you would be, how do you, I know, for example, that you Yolanda, you have been dealing with many contexts, and maybe you can explore a bit how these three elements played out in these three contexts where you have been working on. And these three elements are essentially, on one side, the need to instill in the people the literacy to understand what's going on. What's going on, I mean, with transaction costs plummeting, what's going on with new ecosystemic modes of production, how do you move from the idea of producing a certain service into the idea of facilitating ecosystems, so this platform literacy, if you want. On the other side, the need to, let's say, unbundle the organizational capabilities, the technology, the some basic capabilities that the organization has, and the need to then rebundle them increasingly in many products and new value propositions. So essentially, looking at the organizational reach to the market, the organizational market. How it lands on the market from a perspective of a portfolio of things that interrelate with each other and essentially are rebundled continuously. So can you maybe highlight which one of these challenges was the most pressing in the different contexts where you have been enacting this platform transformation in your experience?
We have to start from the beginning. Like you said, is literacy and mindset, right? Platforms are a relatively new construct, at least at the scale that they are now. So there are very few people that are already educated in the idea of platforms, in platform ecosystems, in what are the pillars of platforms, how platforms work, what are the pros and the cons, and so on and so forth. And although there are many companies that do dream or do want their future to be a platform, they start from, being a marketplace, or they start from being a completely bundle organization and trying to serve the end-to-end all by themselves. So they are struggling with innovation and growth. Or they are a small tech team born of a big need and a big company, and evolving that tech team into a platform for a big and complex ecosystem. So in all of those cases, no matter how big or small the company has been, I have always had to start with the educational part. Always. There have been different degrees of understanding and literacy, but in general, very few individuals in the company knew what a platform was, and even if they knew what it was and they wanted to evolve towards it, they didn't have the tools or the mechanisms. And then it comes, and that at the leadership level. Then it comes the rest of the company. So you can have a very formed and literate and the mindset of the leadership team completely formed, and then you struggle with the rest of the company because they just don't know how to execute for platforms. So it doesn't come only with the willingness and the understanding and the goal setting. You actually have to educate the whole company into becoming shapers. And it's not an easy one, I have to say. It has always taken a huge amount of effort. And I always start with my team. So it's one of the first things that I do, which is create the platform design team, usually coming out of an experienced UX and research team, and evolve them into a quite a much bigger and much broader and deeper type of team that has everything from service design to copy to brand to product design, operations, and so on. And I start with them. I start educating my own team, and they become a little bit like preachers. And through practice, through bringing the workshops and the toolkit to all the teams and showing them how using these toolkits can actually help them not only to find their position within the larger ecosystem, but even their position within the organization. right? If you're in the payments team and you're doing payments, then what are your dependencies with, I don't know, consumption team, or with the product listing team, or with engagement, or with loyalty, or with whatever. So the good thing about platform design is it can be used at the micro scale or at the macro scale, and you can be looking at, like we are now, looking at the entities of the energy ecosystem at a super macro level, but we are also using the toolkit, and we are also using platform thinking within the organization to understand how all the teams are interrelated, what value exchange happens in between teams, and how much that value is worth to happen internally, and how much we need to bring partnerships into the context instead of doing it ourselves. So it's, but none of this is possible without that educational piece first, because you come to teams and you tell them, and now we're going to do a wonderful exercise of ecosystem and value exchange on a platform context, and they look at you that they can't, even if they're willing, even if they actually participate in the exercise. It doesn't get any attrition. It doesn't stick. They don't use it. They don't understand it. They go like, oh, it was cute. We used an hour to do something very interesting, and then they forget it. They don't use it again. It doesn't work for their objectives. It doesn't help with decision making. So definitely education. One, actually, maybe definitely first leadership support, to be able to do the education and get everybody educated and spend time actually taking people through platform education. You require a leadership team that actually wants to get the company into a platform level and wants to spend the time educating. Otherwise, nothing else happens. So first, leadership backing, then education, definitely. And then when at least a big percentage of the company is there and they have the mindset and they have been given the tools, we have service map most of the services of the company, everybody is very aware of the dependencies and the value exchanges and the transactions in between everybody, then you can start with the exercises in unbundling. Otherwise, it's just...
Right. Before coming, sharing with you, Emanuele, one point that comes to my mind that I think you want to stress. It's always, I find this gap, let's say, from understanding that platform design is an opportunity, or platform, marketplace design is an opportunity to leverage, an opportunity on the market, to create a new product and so on. So basically empowering a team to create essentially a new value proposition. But sometimes, most of the times I see that there's a gap inside the organization to understand that essentially you need to mimic these structures internally. Otherwise, what you end up with is just, a team that is oriented to the market, but cannot really leverage on the capabilities on the organization to move things forward. So you have many teams disconnected. They have also always great ideas, but first of all, they don't know how to enact them. Very, basically, for example, sometimes teams do not know how to leverage on internal capabilities on simple things as research, for example, or actually running interviews or experiments. It's something that they really can't do because they don't have these capabilities. But on the other side, also, sometimes they don't have the capability to leverage on the technology, very, very, very simple. And essentially these gaps that exist between the teams that are looking into the market, amazing opportunities, they end up in creating these large frustrations that are also sometimes related to the bureaucracy of the organization. It's like, outside it's crazy. It's the Wild West. There are thousands of opportunities. Then inside, everything is under control. Everything is bureaucratized, and you cannot do anything because somebody will tell you, this is not possible. We have our processes and so on. So, Emanuele, what do you think about it? What is your experience also with the other customers that are working with us in enacting these transformations?
A big problem with what you just described is that the owners of these two transformations, the one towards the market and the one for the enterprise within the enterprise, are different and have different agendas and have a different mindset and have a different language and have a different people, and they tend not to go so well along. That's a big problem, has always been. So we are talking to different wars, Mars and Venus. And the first goal, if we want to play a new strategic role, is to convince them to talk and to speak the same language. That's very difficult. It's already difficult. And I don't think we have convinced the market yet about this necessity. It's not clear why you must be not act internally in a way that really fosters new dynamics externally. And now we know that thanks to Ashby laws from cybernetics, thanks to Conway laws, what you do and what you are inside is really what you produce outside. This is clear. But convincing organizations that this is clear, it's not so easy. So the first thing that we are doing as Boundaryless is really trying to bring all the stakeholders at the same table. And starting from business outcomes, not organizational outcomes, even when it's HR. Because at the end, even the salary of HR directors is paid by the business. And HR directors want to be relevant for the business, want to play a strategic role for the CEO and the board. So helping them to help the business is a starting point, and helping them to talk to the business is the way to make this happen. And there are a number of reasons for which this is difficult, because we have built career paths, because we have built learning paths, because we have envisioned a role for people that really doesn't resonate with this kind of fluidity, ambiguity, unpredictability that we see on the market and we need on the market. So the starting point is, in a sense, trying to, I don't want to say disbundle, but still rethink a number of processes, a number of ideas of what employees are and the role of people in organizations. This is the core. If we don't accept this, well, our hands are tied, and just believing that you can act as a platform in the market without seriously revamping what you are inside is wrong. It's not going to work, and we are starting to see many examples. And just maybe as an assist for the rest of the conversation, the easy part is to unbundle. The easy part is to fragment the organization in many small teams. This is done. Many organizations from Zappos to Spotify, Agile Transformation are fragmenting the firm from a monolith into many small teams. This is easy. The difficult part is how to rebundle, or how to make sense of the complexity and the coordination that you need to realize complex products and experiences without hierarchy and without structure. This conversation is totally missing, even in many of those pioneers that have already fragmented the firm.
Yes, and Yolanda, what's your experience in essentially favoring this, I would say, this facilitating the birth of these new products and services? Because sometimes my feeling is companies are very stuck into the only product that they have. And I know that you had also some experiences in transitioning from a perspective of just selling one product, even if it's a marketplace, into, commercializing and putting on the market and increasing the number of interfaces with the market that the company has. How is it going to happen? How is this happening in your experience? Through entrepreneurial incentives, through leadership indication, through KPIs, through how do you push the organization to multiply the products and the interfaces with the external parties?
It's incredibly difficult. It's very interesting with, we talk a lot of times in business about the DNA of companies, right? And is as embedded into their system of companies as the DNA is to humans. Is extremely difficult to modify. You know, you need literally to splice it, insert stuff into it, and then try to run it again through the company. And most of the times, and it's funny, or not funny, actually, it has to be a virus, right? It has to be something like COVID. And now is a good metaphor into DNAs and viruses. It has to be an event, a cataclysmic event for the company or for the country or for the planet that actually brings the companies to think differently and to start getting that change happening internally in a much more accelerated way. Otherwise, it's very slow. It requires a lot of orchestration. It requires a lot of preaching and a lot of education and winning team by team, doing things the small ways. So let's try to do it, especially in bigger organizations. Let's do it in this kind of contained group, in a smaller scale. Let's show how it works, and then convince the next group, and then try to make it bigger, and so on and so forth. It depends very much of, you know, how it's happening. So when I worked for Hearst and we were trying to do an internal platform, they had globally 380 publications, digital publications, magazines mostly, Elle, Cosmopolitan, and so on. And suddenly they were bleeding, you know, printing press is going down, nobody buys magazines anymore, digital has to succeed, but is very expensive. Why? Because every different publication has a different CMS, has different tech teams, there is nothing centralized, advertising is not centralized, content production is not centralized, nothing. It's wasted money everywhere. Even convincing something so simple as to centralize all the different magazines into one CMS was complicated. We had to start with a group of 3 magazines in the UK, show the case study to Spain, Italy, and Netherlands. They agreed to get into the program. Then we started to see more data, more numbers. With those data and those numbers, we went to the US, presented in Hearst International, and so on and so forth. And it was a relatively painful and slow process. And I thought then that it was a painful and slow process. And then I went into banking. And that was fun. It was when, you know, everybody was getting into the open banking, and the bank databases were opening, and fintechs were flooding the market, and the banks were panicking big time. They had to act fast. They had to act with determination, because, you know, all these small startups were catching up with them and eating their market. And instead of immediately, their first instinct of all the banks was, let's do what they do, but better, because we can, because we have the power. Instead of thinking, let's open up, let's unbundle, let's make small teams, and then partner and create this beautifully organic ecosystem of banking applications and services that we can then bundle into experiences for the different customers of the different products. No, the first instinct, the first DNA fight or flight kind of
let's nuke them,
was directly to be, no, we're going to do everything, and we're going to take all these small things out of the market, and we're going to do better than Monster, we're going to do better, let's copy them, let's do. And I was horrified. I was like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to actually teach you how to create an ecosystem with all of these where everybody succeeds. They are doing it great. Just incorporate them into your systems. Very painful. Then Farfetch was a different example as well, where a small marketplace, e-commerce marketplace, suddenly became or started to evolve towards a platform. Again, complicated, because, you know, the brand of Farfetch is a big one. When we were talking about partnerships and including more people into the ecosystem, everything had to be Farfetch. And there was no given space for the brands of the partners and to actually grow, because we had completely conquered, let's say, the innovation teams and the business growth teams and, you know, many different teams. The marketing team was still very old thinking. And it was bringing but our brand has to be prevalent, but our brand has to be the strong one. But yes, but you can share a little bit of that with our partners. They have their businesses, and this is not just about us. It took a while until it was Farfetch and thrift, Farfetch and secondhand, Farfetch and whatever it was, in terms of sharing the limelight with our partners and other brands coming into place. So it's always very difficult to extract that old school, DNA out of companies. Very painful and very, very hard work to do so. But once it happens, once you start inserting, little new parts and the links start to work, it's fantastic. You can see the magic happening, and suddenly people goes, oh my God, now we can use this product for so many different things, right? We can use search, which we were just using for our little marketplace before. Now we can use it not only for other tenants or partners, but also internally for different teams that we have now bundled into other products, but we can offer our services or our product to our own internal companies or internal teams. And you are, I don't know, it's like Christmas all over when these things happen. When suddenly a team goes to you and say, oh my God, look, we're doing this or we're doing that, which is where we're rebundling with this team and this team to create this experience. And it's like, yes.
Yes, I want to piggyback on this because I was having by the way, a fantastic podcast that is coming up next week, in 2 weeks, on our podcast with Matthew Skelton, that is one of the authors of Team Topologies, that book that I really suggest everybody that is involved in software and DevOps. And we were talking about how essentially they have describe essentially the type of teams that you have in a software-centric organization, which, by the way, for me, it means any organization at the moment, because there's no more software, it's everything. And they have this idea of the stream-aligned team, that is a team that is fully responsible to produce a certain customer outcome, essentially a feature, for example. And they have the idea of a platform team that is essentially an enabling team that reduces cognitive complexity for the stream-aligned teams to do their job, and, for example, takes over some scale elements or some other elements that enable the stream-aligned team, essentially. And we have similar patterns, for example, in our entrepreneurial ecosystem enabling organization framework that is based on inspired heavily, I would say, by here's Rendane, which is based on this idea of a microenterprise that ventures out and creates new things, and baked by shared service platforms and baked by other type of microentrepreneurial units that provide business enabling services to other microenterprises that venture out into the market. And we have seen these dynamics also in Zappos. There is an amazing interview to Rachel Murch on our channel that I really suggest to our listeners, where she explains the transition of Zappos towards what she calls a market-based dynamic. So one provocation I think that we really need to understand in our organizations is that you have two choices if you go through this rabbit hole of unbundling. So one choice is to enforce essentially all the teams to manage their profit and loss. And this is a powerful way to reduce organizational debt and technical debt. Essentially, you have an organization that decides to play on par with the market. You essentially tear down all the barriers that you have inside and outside. And when I was interviewing Matthew, he made this very interesting point, and he told me, everything that is not representing an advantage, an IP that your organization has, it needs to become a platform. It needs to become an enabling service. And once it becomes a platform, apparently it makes a lot of sense to open it up to the rest of the world and to the rest of the market. And this is, for example, what if you look at one of the best organizations, I think, at the moment when it comes to platform strategy, which is Shopify, they have a beautiful YouTube video of their extension platform team. So essentially the team that is in charge of designing architectures to extend their core core main user experience. So essentially, they provide this user experience on the market to the people that want to create a shop, and they have this extension platform where third parties, developer, can integrate new features inside their platform. And it was amazing to see how they explain they had to weave an ecosystem of developer that was completely continuous between the inside and the outside of the organization. So they had to do training inside and to do developer events inside and outside the organization. So it was essentially the same thing. And I think, the question that companies have on the table is about, once you have unbundled things, how do you essentially give direction to the organization? What is the direction where you go? And we have a lot of examples. And one example is radical market continuity with profit and loss, essentially what Zappos or Hire are doing, and others that manage this percolating of objectives and key metrics that the units need to produce across the organization. And probably the most famous is Amazon OP1, OP2 operational essentially process that they use to percolate these KPIs. So Emanuele, maybe you can piggyback on that and try to add some bits on how do you, when you rebundle, essentially, how do you give direction? Who is the responsible to ensure the coherence and the strategy of the organization?
Yeah, this is important because this is also a dramatic shift. Until a few years ago, probably the board, the CEO were the one calling the shots, the big guys, right? Defining strategy and maybe also helping to operationalize strategy and then telling everybody else what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And then we see budgets and we see the cascading down of targets and all the corporate life follows after that. That means basically that even the middle management can only look after operations, but the decisions are taken centrally and at the top. This has a number of pitfalls. The first one is you're blind. As a small team, as smart as you can be, as senior as you can be, you don't have visibility about what is happening at the edges of the organization. Probably you have hundreds of thousands of sensors, of people that constantly interact with customers, with partners, with suppliers, and you don't get their feedback. So you don't have access to this information. You are not acting on this information. Your organization is blind. And this is a suicide. This is a suicide because if we look at platforms, we want to empower personalized experiences. We want to empower millions of others to do something with our own services. And there is no way you can sense all of that. But there is also a problem with engagement. If I'm told what to do, I don't feel part. I don't feel ownership about what is happening. I won't put my extra effort into it because I will immediately shift into a mindset of transactional exchange. You give me money, I do something. You give me more money, I do something else. I'm not going to be proactive. So the first effect of all of this is opening up strategy, not to 10 people or 15, but to 15,000 or 100,000. So finding a way for which you as a leader, as the top leadership, are establishing only the minimum viable constraints for the organization, the enabling constraints in complexity, just the minimum principles that you need to guarantee this messy coherence. We had a recent conversation with Sonia Belguinot, messy coherence, not perfect coherence. We don't need perfect coherence, messy coherence to be part of the same identity, but to thrive on complexity and diversity. But there is another angle, and this is happening lower in the organization, more operationally. This is what really Hire is doing well. And it's about dynamically letting pieces of the organization to coordinate themselves. And so far, we believe that you need middle management to do that. So you need to, fragment the work, to assign tasks top down. What we are seeing is that if you want to scale, and if you want to be flexible up to what the market is asking, you cannot use hierarchy. You need to find a distributed way for people to self-coordinate around customer outcomes. This is what Hire is doing very well. This is what Zappos is doing very well. This is what, in a sense, Morningstar is doing very well. And you can pick different units for doing this. It could be the individual, it could be the team, it could be even a large, reasonably large group.
You're on mute. Sorry, Emanuele, I unavvertedly, I don't know.
Oh, sorry. You can be a large team, what Hire is calling an industry platform, but still, individuals in the organization are deciding where to go and how to pursue some goals. It's not the management telling them how to do that. This is a dramatic shift. It's probably as big as the shift in strategy that we are seeing. So on one side, opening up strategy. On the other side, opening up the coordination about how to pursue specific strategic goals. Unless you are doing both of them, well, you are too slow and too rigid and too blind to thrive in this new market.
I'm also curious to ask you, Yolanda, since you are working now in this space of energy, that is clearly, a space where you have different layers evolving. I always think about Stuart Brand's pace layering. You kind of have maybe an infrastructural layer of your business, and on top of that you have the services, and then you have the technological part. So really, how do you manage this different pace of change that happens inside the organization? Because all of these things have different needs in terms of management, in terms of and I think it's really interesting to think about opening up, because maybe some of these innovations that you are looking for cannot be really just produced by the inside teams. It needs to be more than produced. It needs to be captured from the outside. So how do you face this challenge of multiple paces, multiple interfaces, and capturing innovations from the outside?
How do you manage it? Again, is just an organizational structure, if you want. As I said to you earlier, today I had to be a bit later because I was in a 4-hour workshop just trying to organize all the teams of the company on those layers and also the verticals. So you end up on a matrix where you actually have to coordinate with the leaders of all the different parts, right? The layers of design, technology, APIs, documentation, business, HR, and so on. You have to coordinate your objectives, and you have to coordinate the KRs of your objectives to make sure that the dependencies created by them are all coordinated. So it requires a magic level of coordination, but and then it requires teams that are geared to actually look at that relatively small amount of coordination and loose understanding and actually run with it and go and reach to the other teams and the other areas inside or outside. As we are saying, it might be nobody knows better than the teams inside because they do their own market research. They know their competitors. They know who's out there absolutely killing it in whatever aspect, right? In engagement tools for customers, in marketing, in payments, in whatever. The teams know better than anybody, because that's what they do. They compare themselves, they look at the products outside. So it has to be very internalized, the idea that, we're never going to be as good as X, or actually this thing and this thing is done better by this company or that company. We're just going to talk to them and see if we can do some partnership, or if we buy, or if we acquire, or whatever. But one thing that while I was listening to Emanuele, I was making a note, and it's something that I have encountered in everywhere, and is related to the first thing I was saying. It's not only a matter of education. There is a lot of people that is just not designed to be an entrepreneur. Unfortunately, the world for the last 100 years has been educated every children to be part of the manufacturing world, to do what is told. That's how education is designed, including now for our own children. Children are not educated, teenagers are not educated, even adults are not educated for entrepreneurship. They are not educated for unknown and to feel comfortable in the unknown. They're educated to be given very clear direction, very clear goals, very clear path, very clear materials, and this is what you're doing. And this is how we have all been educated, you, me, and everybody. And they're still educating the generations the same. Very few people have the entrepreneurial DNA in themselves that escape education, that do not end up the university, that even don't end up the high school, because they want to do their own thing and create their own businesses and be their own organization and so on. We want to create these entrepreneurial organizations. We are going to have to educate more entrepreneurs. We are going to have to undo hundreds of years of manufacturing education and obedience and, expecting that you're going to be told every single thing of the things that you have to do in the day. We are going to have to undo it and allow people to make their own decisions. Here, £2 million. Go and build this thing. Oh, you think you cannot build it? This neighbor can build it better? You take it from them. And that's not wrong. It's not that you're going to lose your job if this other person does it better. Because that's what happens. This is how we have educated people. You don't go and say, actually, our product is not that good. We're going to take that one. Or we're going to partner with these people. Because they think, I'm going to lose my job. What we're going to do is build one better. We're going to put all of our effort to build one better. No need to repeat. But this is all has been drilled into our heads.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, Emanuele, then I lead to you. I think as a provocation for you to build on this, I think we either do it or just the market's going to do it. And so that's going to be complex for existing organizations to deal with, right?
Yeah, it's not just a matter of business and market. It's a matter of people. I see millions of people waking up on Monday morning and not willing to virtually or physically, now that we are going back after COVID, going back to the office. They don't want, they don't feel like, they don't want to, they are not connected to what is happening in the company. So basically, since we are spending 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours working, we are wasting our life. This is the problem. So I don't think we have choice. I see, even with COVID, the millions of people transitioning to new opportunities, to new contractual relationships with multiple employers, looking for gigs. I think the market is shifting, and enabling this is a social issue, is a social opportunity, and it's a people opportunity, because otherwise we are going to be unhappy, unsatisfied, unproductive. And we need to be helped with that because there are fears, there are duties that we have, there are bills to pay, but more and more people are trying to find ways for increasing the meaning they find in work and the contribution they bring at work. And then don't find these answers in traditional incumbents. This is not happening. So what can we do to make this happen? And we believe that this idea of the entrepreneurial ecosystem enabling organization, if you want, is a safe enabler for millions of people to find a space, find the support, to find also the investments to reasonably bet on their future and to increase their contribution to their future and the future of our society. So this is just not a need from the business or from the market. It's a need for the people and by the people.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we need to, one example I use sometimes is the old medieval markets and communities, right? Where things were happening more organically, right? The town was organized in a square, and then that square was being utilized by the different market vendors to actually create the market. And then the vendors were attracting the customers, and then the community was adding more facilities and so on and so forth. And it was those shared services that created the market, that attracted the customers and created the experiences and so on. And we need to go back to that way of thinking, where things grow more organically, where there are some shared services, but then everybody's responsible for their own area of the business, but together they contribute somehow into the overall health and well-being of the ecosystem. However, is not how even platforms are being organized at the moment. It is being organized in a way where there is one dominant company that creates all these shared services and takes a mighty cut out of everybody that participates on it. And they can come with new models, and Shopify can say, oh, we charge less than Amazon, but they're still charging quite a lot. They are more open. It's true that they have created more sharing opportunities and more development opportunities and so on and so forth than Amazon has, which is a much more closed and governed environment. But still is far. I mean, there are a few communities, there are a few companies, even higher. Higher is one company dominating. They decide where they invest and where they don't invest, and where are they going to put their money and where don't. You are pitching to a higher power, if you want. There is not, I don't think it works as a community where, you know, there is a big decision by everyone participating in higher or where they're going to put the money. I imagine is a.
But I mean, this is exactly not the point that I think we are debating. Also, you have a spectrum, no? From the vertical integrated, siloed, hierarchical organization of the last century, and then you have what the market seems to be converging towards. That is dynamic connection and contracting between parties, unbundled modules, extreme composability, and in the middle, there needs to be the organization of the 21st century, you know, that finds essentially a way to make the case for entrepreneurs to be part of something. You know, what is this something? What is this mission that we have? What is this purpose that we have as an organization? And also, sometimes we are naive in thinking about some of the services we use all the time. So some of the services we use, they need some structural infrastructures. They need to have some complex processes, complicated processes they need to run. Think about utilities, but also, you know, complex supply chains in agriculture, for example. So I'm sure that there needs to be a nuance, you know, there needs to be a middle place between the unbundledness of the market and the hierarchical integration of the companies of the last century. The question is, how do you as a company really enact this transformation, and to some extent how you travel from the hierarchical nature towards the market, and where do you stop? More or less, this is the challenge that companies have on the table, right? What do you think, Emanuele? Also, as a closing.
Yeah, let me jump on this as well. I think we're already seeing it. I think that organizations have a duty towards society, and the duty is not just for maximizing their, shareholder value. Okay, that's what they have been doing for many years now. They have a duty of helping other organizations that are not necessarily owned or fully owned by them to go and do something for the organization and for society. And if we envision this entrepreneurial ecosystem enabling organization as an incubator, putting money on the table, giving the minimal enabling constraints to guarantee this messy coherence, but then finding other actors that are brought into the ecosystem on which the company invests, for which the company provides services, but organizations that can make their own decisions. Well, we are already in the middle because we have external entrepreneurs. They're no longer employees. They are more partners of the firm. They could be thousands of them. This could happen at the level of geographical, aggregations of small companies. So for me, this is a change accelerator for the market and for organizations that are going towards new forms of ownership. Well, it could become really a different idea of capitalism, a different idea of the firm, a different idea of the role of the business in society.
Right. I mean, thank you so much. I think it's we have covered lots of ground, and I would like to offer as yeah. Go ahead.
Just one more, because what you're saying is actually right. I just wanted to put an example into what Emanuele has said more theoretically. Kaluza's, the company I work for, Kaluza's mission is to decarbonize, is to help the energy ecosystem, or actually help everyone to decarbonize. And that's such a huge, complex problem, right? I have a year and a half working on this problem, and we have, only starting to scratch the surface of it. It cannot be solved, by one person.
By your company alone, right?
By 10, this is a global problem that requires the coordination of hundreds of companies of different kinds. Is infrastructure for sure, but is IoTs, is communities, is artificial intelligence, is computer system, is transactional ones, is human, is education, is a million things. So our mission is practically impossible as a company on our own. But that's the reason why we put this mission, because by trying to achieve the mission, we have no choice but to actually collaborate, open, and bundle and rebundle and find a way, because that's where we're going. And we know that the only way to solve this problem is by applying all of these mechanisms. So I think if you find the right goal, and it's a goal where clearly the problem or the challenges space is bigger than oneself and many selves, then it will happen organically. It has no choice. We have started now, and the corner of the problem space we occupy is tiny, but we are always referring back to it whenever we make plans, whenever we hire, whenever we organize, whenever we are thinking of changing our offices place, whenever we look into our internal processes. We are always looking at that one really big goal, and then breaking it down into smaller pieces and going, right, what can we handle this year? We can do this and this, but we are one step closer. And, and this is what we're moving to. So if you have the big goal and the strength to do it, and you hire the right people and educate along the way constantly, I think we're going to get there. We will.
Definitely. I mean, you can also use the purpose as a way to say where the organization ends to some extent, or at least to define the constraints for entrepreneurs to participate. So I think definitely, paradoxical, if you want, as we move into more unbounded organization, the purpose is becoming even more important to keep us together, for a certain mission or for a certain direction that we want to move along as a path. So let me just use a minute as we close this conversation to piggyback on some of the ideas that we have talked about. We have been talking about unbundling organizations. So we spoke about Hayer's Rand&A model that inspired our entrepreneurial ecosystem enabling organization framework. We spoke about the fact that these common protocols of organizing are also present in other organizations. So, for example, Zappos. And I think it's always a good idea for our listeners to catch up on our blog. We have been recently publishing a blog post that explains how these patterns really traveling across different organizations. And I spoke about team topologies. Also, this is a very interesting topic. You need to catch up with this work on how this mechanism is playing out in software. And 3 things that we want to talk about that we believe you need to talk about as you move along this transformation are essentially, on one hand, the shift in thinking. Yolanda has been spending a lot of time at the start of the conversation talking about cultural shift that you need to enact, the literacy, and essentially ensuring that everybody gets it. Then the unbundling of the technological capabilities. And I think it was really interesting to hear you, Yolanda, talking about how you have been unbundling, for example, some research capabilities. You spoke about AI and other technologies that the companies need to use, and then adoption of the entrepreneurial, the micro unit structures, sometimes enacting this profound pervasivity of profit and loss, other times being able to percolate, let's say, other metrics to the teams so that they can really work their way to help the organization produce market value, customer value, and ecosystem value at the end of the day. So systemic value, as I know that you are a big proponent, as we do, of framing the organization in the systems the organization contributes to. So I'm really happy we had this conversation. I think we are starting to grasp the complexity of the transition. At least we have identified these 3 topics: literacy, technology, unbundling capabilities, and entrepreneurial systems. It's a start for companies and organizations that are interested to go along this path. Please reach out. And thanks so much, Yolanda, again, for joining us. Your experience is always so great to hear. You have been going across industries, always with this platform and ecosystem mindset. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everybody. Emanuele, thanks also to you. And it was a pleasure to host this conversation. And to our listeners, catch up soon.